you everyone for joining us this morning. I would really like to welcome you to our live session with Della Hudson. My name is Adriana Amato, and I work at Capitalise, who, as many of you may know, we help accountants find their SME the appropriate type of funding. And I am very excited to be joined by the charming Della Hudson this morning, who has recently published a book which has been given glowing reviews by Gary Turner. So a big welcome to you, Della.
Hello.
Now, without giving away the ending to your book, could you tell us a little bit about your book, The Numbers Business, and how to build a successful cloud accountancy practice?
Yes, certainly. Like many people on this call, probably, I set up my own business, started at the kitchen table, and whilst there are bits and pieces of help available, it took a lot of finding. So I hope I've put everything into one book to get somebody starting up, the formalities, what you need to do, bit of marketing, HR, systems, of course, technology, in order to build a modern practice. Because for those of us who, should we say, trained some time ago, things have changed. So it's looking at things as if you were running a business rather than just doing accounts.
Absolutely. And we're happy to for you to suggest a different structure, but what I thought we could do is maybe try and analyze a business, or setting up a business by using the triple P. So I was thinking the idea of looking at people being both your employees and your clients, the planning of setting up your businesses, and also the processes. And I just wanted to continue using the P's, but I mean by processes, I guess, by using things like technology and all of the processes set up in place. So when you sort of thought about setting up your own practice, I mean, was it, did you just literally start with a blank piece of paper, or how did this actually come about?
I, like a lot of mothers, wanted I could spend some time with my kids and some time carrying on the professional work that I love, and it wasn't possible to find that. And initially, there was a very vague plan to just do a few sets of accounts from the kitchen table. But because I spent my whole life running businesses more broadly, it soon grew. And I was so pleased I managed to do that. I was high on endorphins, and I came home and I wrote what I called my Icarus budget. The plan that would take me from the kitchen table into a proper business with which, of course, as you're putting together the numbers, you're looking at where the clients are coming from, what's from, how to market to them, when you're looking at the people that are need to look after that, where they're coming from, and also the systems to do everything efficiently. And systems were really important to me because my hours per week were quite limited. So rather than maximizing my profitability, I was looking at maximizing my profitability per hour. And that's why a lot of the coaching that I do now is with business owners who they're working 80-hour weeks because that's how they set up their business, and they're stuck in that trap of how to get out of it. Whereas I've had my own constraints that meant I could only grow the business very slowly, but I have always managed to have that work-life balance because that was my essential. Gary, in his lovely foreword to the book, having an insight into my notebook. And I did have a notebook, and the very first page, it said my personal objective was to have interesting professional work that fitted around family life. And there were so many opportunities along the way where I could have grown the business faster. I knew my personal objective. And I think that's very important to know why you're setting up the business, because so many people set up a business, they want flexibility, and then they paint themselves into a corner with the hours that they set out to do. And there's no problem doing 80-hour weeks for a short period of time, but when you're sort of 3 years into your business and still doing that, it's not really good for your physical and mental health.
So you're sort of thinking there that initially people set up, and I guess this applies generally to small businesses, but you set out to have maybe time for your family, as you said, or the flexible working approach, but you could be slightly distracted or maybe enticed by the idea of really growing a bigger practice or growing it quickly. So it's to keep, I guess, in mind that you really are wanting to stay true, I guess, to the core of why you started out a small business. Is that right?
Absolutely. And for everybody, that personal objective will be different. And what you consider a good work-life balance will be very different. So nobody can tell you what that is. They can help you to think it through, but only you can decide what that is. And once you've set your personal objective, then you look at the business objective and then break it down into how you're going to get there, which is always easier said than done.
So on your piece of paper, you had your initial goal, and then were you setting out in terms of planning in, 1 month, 3 months, a year, or how did that sort of look?
I really, from corporate life, I'm quite used to doing 5-year plans. So I looked at
maybe that's the millennial in me, and I've got to go break things down to 1 month. So I do apologize.
No, I started where I want to be in 5 years' time, because I think that's the sort of foreseeable future. I mean, if you look back on what you were doing 5 years ago, could you have forecast what you were going to be doing now? And most people couldn't. So I don't think there's much benefit looking forward in great detail beyond 5 years. So we had the 5-year plan, which then broke back down into 1 year, and then the detailed first year plan. So I've always had the first year is in monthly detail, but even beyond that, things like on the marketing, how am I going to generate this income? Well, you need to find clients. So how do you find clients? And breaking that down, that each week I had to attend so many networking events. I had to make so many social media posts, write so many blogs and things like that. So on my big whiteboard in the office, I didn't have any financials. I just had those KPIs, because that's what I needed to focus on each week. And as you know, if you do the right things, the profit drops out of the bottom. But it was working that all out. And the marketing at first was a bit hit and miss. I was fortunate, I'd done a little bit of marketing in my degree course, and at one point in my career, a marketing director had sort of taken me under his wing, and because I was interested, he taught me an awful lot. So you find out a lot just by being nosy. So I had a reasonable idea what to do, and I would say the two big resources I use, I have to thank them, are 2020, very good at the how to, and to a certain extent the what. They provided some marketing material before I started writing my own. And then the watertight marketing is a book and various courses, master plan that you can do, which helps you with your own strategy. So altogether, my bits and pieces suddenly turned into a proper marketing plan in the same way I had the financial plan. So there was some very good resources there.
Mm-hmm. So you've mentioned, oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
So you sort of mentioned your marketing plan and really breaking it down into quite a lot of detail. What else did you really have to look at? Were you immediately looking for who was going to help and work with you, or what else was sort of on that piece of paper?
Initially I started up on my own, and then there was the dilemma of, do I take on, well, first of all, do I employ or do I outsource? And I had a preference for having somebody in-house that I could just pass bits of everything to, rather than if you outsource, you tend to just be able to hand over chunks. I have used outsourcers a little bit, both a virtual PA and an accountancy outsourcing company, and they were very good, but limited in what I could pass to them. So I decided to go for somebody in-house, and then it's, do you have an expensive qualified person part-time, or do you have a trainee more or less full-time, except when they're at college? But you have to spend the time training them, but then they're trained in exactly how you want to do things. So my very first employee was an apprentice, and there's a huge amount of paperwork to get the apprenticeship funding, and actually that seems to have trebled recently, but it was very good. It's the only way really I could have afforded to grow beyond just me, was with the apprenticeship support financially. There was a little lump sum that I put towards getting him a computer, a desk, all these things. You need extra software licenses, so it was good to have that. But you really have to be prepared to commit the time to training somebody. And I think there are a lot of accountants who choose to stay as one-man bands, one-woman bands, it would have been in my case. But some of them want to grow but can't get on with the employees, and you really do have to invest time. With my apprentice, the first 3 months I was training him, I was doing my own work in the evenings, which obviously wasn't ideal. It was my means to an end. So I'd train him up, and I was so lucky he learned everything pretty much first time. He had already put himself through AAT level 2, so I put him through level 3 and 4, and then started down the certified route as well. So that worked really well after the first 3 months. The first 3 months were dreadful, but I could see the progress all the time.
And do you think that's quite key when you're looking to grow what is, I guess, essentially a fairly new type of practice, being a purely cloud accounting practice? So was that in mind, thinking if I get someone junior, they might be more tech savvy, or I can teach them specifically with how I want things to fit together? Or because I hear so much from various accountants that, if you know any like young eager accountant, I'm just really eager. I'm really struggling to find people. So do you think that is maybe a solution when you are setting up your own practice, to actually not dismiss sort of younger sort of trainees or apprentices?
Overall, I think you need a balance,
right,
of age, experience, qualification. But of course, when you're first starting up, you don't have enough people to have that balance, that diversity in just about any way. So it was having somebody who didn't have any preconceptions about accountancy, because I'd been running my background is I trained in practice and then almost immediately moved into management accounts, financial control, and working the corporate life really. So I was used to running companies that weren't accountancy practices. So when I came to set up my own practice, I set up a business and took what I saw as the best from every industry. I wasn't chained to only having worked for an accountancy practice and doing what they did just because they did it last year. So I was able to invent what I thought was the ideal practice. And in the end, we started to, when we were recruiting, we looked for people with a customer service background was more important than an accountancy background, because you can train people technically, but that's quite easy. But if they don't get how you look after clients and things like that, so big accountancy practices, you have a separate department. You can have those real technical people who are so good at what they do technically that they don't have to deal too much with people. But in a small practice where we're seeking to serve people, you've got lots of little businesses who don't know how to run a business. They don't know what an accountant can do for them. They're petrified of the numbers.
Yeah.
I remember my own father, they had a rental property, and my father used to put on a suit to go and see his accountant, which is another generation ago. But I didn't want to build that sort of thing. I wanted to be out there and actively helping people. So that meant being approachable, being easy for people to talk to. So I'd love to say we were proactive, but proactive takes a lot of time, which takes a lot of money. So we couldn't be as proactive as I would like to be in an ideal world. But even for our smallest clients, we were reactive. We included telephone support so they could pick up the phone, which meant they'd get their bookkeeping right first time, or if they had a query. I had somebody call me from a car showroom on the stock tax implications of a new car.
Yeah.
And that was the idea, that we would be there at the end of a phone for them. We used to send out the generic information in our e-news, and for a while we did a physical newsletter as well, but we dropped that in favour of just focusing on the monthly e-news. So whenever new legislation came in, you'd sort of run down the client list and drop an email to those who needed to be told, and things like auto enrolment and before that, RTI, auto enrolment, making tax digital. We did try to be quite proactive, but like I say, never as proactive as I'd like.
I guess that raises an interesting point, or moves us on to the next sort of area. You sort of said, I wanted to employ people that were, very sort of customer focused and able to interact well with my clients and understand that it was, to really serve the client. And sometimes people didn't know, what you as the accountant could do. I guess as the flip side, did you find sometimes that clients actually didn't want that? And, when you're building out your client base, did you start out with an ideal client in mind, or was it, God, I just need to grow? How did you sort of approach building out a cloud practice with a consistent client base of clients that you really wanted to work with?
Yeah, right from the start, I had a specification. It was quite vague, but they had to be nice people. They had to be able to afford our fees, and they had to understand the value of our fees as well, which was partly down to us to prove or to explain what we could do for the money and how it would benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
But also they had to be receptive to that. So for a little one-man band, well, we had a client, he was retired, he had his pension, and he had a very part-time business repairing caravans. Now, he was winding down, he had no interest in growing his business. It was all came through a couple of personal contacts. So we couldn't really give business advice.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lifestyle business, not a growing business. But what we could do is take the fear out of what's, dealing with the numbers, dealing with authorities, things like that, that he really didn't want to be bothered with. So I used to joke I ought to give away a free packet of painkillers with with every engagement letter, because for a lot of clients that's all we did, is just take away the pain for them. Where we could offer the best value was in the business advice and helping them to grow, and
mm-hmm.
not just finding them finance. As you know, at Capitalise, it is an important part of the business, but it's not the only advice that we give. So if a client wanted to grow, they need a plan, they need people, they need introductions, they need to sort out their marketing, their systems, their people behind that. And the finance is just a very tiny bit of it. So you make that part of it very slick.
Yeah.
But it isn't, well, I was going to say it isn't the most important part. Without the finance, a lot of the growth couldn't happen, or it would have to happen in a different way.
Yeah.
So I very much believe that business advice is broader than just doing a budget and applying for a bit of cash.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of discussion within the industry about, oh no, you should be moving to advisory. That's the only way you're going to be successful. What's your thoughts on that matter?
For us, that was the way we chose to go, because that was my background, was growing businesses.
Yeah.
However, there are still lots of smaller clients out there who are happy with the status quo. They just want to remain compliant. And to some extent, there always will be. And for those clients, what they want is a slick, cost-effective accountant. So in a way, what we did, we put the systems in place to make the accounts production, the bookkeeping as slick as we could, as efficient as we could. So we didn't spend too much time on those because they were automated as much as possible. And then we put the business advisory front end on it, value add on it. But for those who don't want the business advice, then the same sort of systemization that we used could be used to just provide lower prices, and you provide your value that way.
Did you offer a low cost alternative if they didn't want, your business advice, or did you say, look, you're not for me, and you move them to, or you refer them to another accountant?
Initially, we would take on almost any size, and then we refined it. So, it wasn't just being nice, adding value and paying the bill. It was more focused on the people who were serious about growing their business.
Yeah.
So what they would get out of it was bigger profits, or they'd sort of get their life back and sustain the same profits. So that was all part of it, and we put a minimum client turnover. We decided they had to be VAT registered. So anyone smaller than that, we would refer to another suitable accountant in the area. They had to be serious about their business, which meant that people coming in to get tax returns done right at the last minute were not serious business people for us. Because even if you don't get the numbers, you should just understand how important it is and get, throw them out to us or to another accountant who could get those numbers. So they had to be serious about their business and growing as well, because that's how we added the value. Or there had to be some way that we could help them. I'd love to charge a high fee for doing nothing, but my conscience wouldn't allow me to. We at least took on people where we thought we could make a difference. And to me, you increase somebody's profitability, does so much for them and the economy, rather than just saving them a bit of tax. So the tax always came after the business growth.
And did you, in a sense, I mean, you mentioned before they had to understand the value of the fees. Did you have to almost sort of sell really the value or what you were actually going to be able to help with? Is that how it came about, or did they come to you sort of wanting this knowledge of how you could improve profitability or their processes?
A lot of people just see accountants as keeping them legal and playing with the historical numbers. So we had to get out that, accountancy has changed. And so many people said to me, oh, you're not like any other accountants. And actually, I know lots of accountants who have that same approach, but there obviously aren't enough of them around. And the way we did that to show people that we could do the business advice side, that we could support them, was the establishing yourself as an expert. So writing the blogs, sharing them, chatting online, and then I bit the bullet and I did some public speaking, which I absolutely hated at first, and I don't suppose I'll ever love it. But we started to run what we called our Money Matters events once a quarter. So we'd have a guest speaker on a marketing or sales or something like that, or a technical IT person, somebody that we're comfortable to work alongside and to introduce to our client base. And then I would do a half an hour talk on a business growth topic, never on a tax topic, because I think...
Why not? It sounds riveting.
I know, and I'm quite happy to read my tax texts when I'm short on sleep. But if it doesn't excite me that much, how can I expect a business owner? They assume that we, rightly or wrongly, that we know all that side of it. What they weren't aware of is how much we could help on the other stuff. So I did like the 6 profit improvement principles, or like the talk I did at Accountex was on using social media for marketing and networking and so on, things like that. So some of those talks, and then of course we'd include a bit of face-to-face networking, but we just built relationships and helped people. And the other way that we got our expertise out, we did what initially started as a 2-hour bookkeeping workshop and then became a 2-hour zero workshop. We would get half a dozen people to a 2-hour zero workshop, and we made a small charge to non-clients, but they're always free for clients, because we wanted their bookkeeping to be as good as possible so that we had less to do at the year end, or that we could be as slick as possible. So whilst the ostensible reason was to help them with their bookkeeping, what was actually happening was that they were building a relationship with our head bookkeeper who was training them, plus whoever was there as the second person. So they were building relationships. They were able to ask questions, and the team could demonstrate they're helpful people. They can answer these practical questions, and that no question is too stupid. You know, ask them all and they'll get an answer, and we'll help you, we'll show you. So we had building the relationship with the people in the room, but where we had the mixture of clients and non-clients, the non-clients would say, oh, my accountant doesn't do this. And the conversations, basically our clients would sell us to the non-clients in the room.
Those with the most authority, I guess, the clients.
Yeah. And it was brilliant. And also in advertising that we offered these workshops, we picked up a lot of people saying, oh, well, I know the basics of Xero, but I'm sure there are better ways of doing it, or I've got this particular problem. And so one of our bookkeepers would go out and train them for an hour or two, paid for. So one-to-one training for which we were being paid, but it was building the relationship and helping people. And every one of those who had a one-to-one session with one of our bookkeepers then came on later as a full-blown accounts client. So again, we're almost being paid for marketing, although hopefully we did provide some value as well in teaching them to get more out of it. But it's not just what you do, it's how you do it, and being approachable, I think, is a key thing. And that is something a lot of accountants are introverts. I am myself, but because I've been dragged up around the world, I've learned to put some social skills on the front of that.
The irony that really strikes me is, I guess, this balance between, you sort of, everything that you've described, the money matters, the running the sort of training around Xero, blog posts, just getting out, building the relationships at conferences. It's all really grounded in, as you said, building that relationship, being face to face, knowing the people. But the irony is then that you're building something which is entirely cloud and actually probably, on the face of it, doesn't really require all of those sort of interactions. But yeah, it shows sort of that to really be able to utilize the technology, still at the crux of it all is this ability to, know the clients and know people on a personal level. And I think that, it's so important, and I think it's often forgotten about when we go to these conferences and it's all focused on the technology, and we really move so far away from what it's all about. When you said before, you mentioned how you had to train clients with technology and with Xero. Did for those that are, I guess, listening and that are looking to transition their firm, they may be interested to, should they be worried about whether any clients will be reticent to move over to cloud-based, or how did you sort of deal with any pushback from clients with the use of technology?
We, as always, went for the low-hanging fruit first. So we made sure that we were trained up internally. And Xero do an excellent migration certification now, which I could have done with years ago. But for anybody just doing it now, do the Xero migration certification. It will tell you a lot. The thing I learned being a small firm is not to move too many clients over at a time. So please, people, learn from my mistakes. Don't move too many over at a time.
How many would you suggest?
It would depend on the size of the business and how much ongoing stuff, because while you're migrating, you're still trying to do something for all those other clients as well. So I think initially, one, so you can work out your process, and then you move to a handful, and then you can start to roll out the volumes because you're still learning your way through it as well. So you're trying to hold a client's hand, but you don't know what they'll need. So take your time, do it slowly.
Mm-hmm.
You've got things like Move My Books for moving people onto both Xero and QuickBooks Online. Although I prefer Xero, QuickBooks Online is quite nice as well. So get yourselves trained internally, pick out your first people that you will take very slowly. They're usually the ones who are tech savvy, they are quite switched on, and they'll probably go and do the online training themselves. So you only need to pick up a few bits. And then I would say you need to hold their hands for 1 or 2 months. Because a lot of people are just worried about it, and they just need lots of TLC, and you just got to stroking the clients like you sort of stroke your dog or your cat, just to reassure them and make them feel loved. So we would just look after them, be there for them. Actually, our best one was moving a 60-something-year-old. I should probably say she was 21, but she just happened to have a bus pass. But she kept immaculate cathedral books. They were brilliant, and they were so good. I showed our trainee, who of course brought up in the digital age, had never seen manual books, just heard of it in theory. So I showed her these books that, look, this is what we're actually doing online, and this is what it means in practice. So she came along to one of our workshops, and then we set up Xero for her once she'd finished her year end. So it was 31st December year end, and because her books were in such good condition, we were able to set up the main bits. Some of it we could set up ahead of time based on the previous year's accounts, and the rest we did right at the very beginning of the year. So she'd had her training, we migrated the opening balances and so on. And there were lots of conversations between her, and we allocated her one of our older bookkeepers so that she would feel more comfortable in the relationship. Because I don't know, one of the more junior ones might have known, could probably have done it technically, but it's who the client feels comfortable with. And this, I think, is why you need the diversity within the organisation. So they worked hand in hand, all the queries. And by the end of the first month, the queries had stopped. So we just sort of made a courtesy phone call to check she was okay. And then for her first back quarter, we touched base at that point and looked through the VAT return just to see if there was anything odd on there. And after that, she was away. So that was somebody who wasn't used to doing anything online. Managed to convert that. So there's not an age thing, it's very much an attitude thing. She was doing the books for her, the family business, which was gradually being passed down to the son. So she wanted to make sure her son was looked after if anything happened to her, but she could also take advantage of being semi-retired and spend time away from the business. So it was part of their succession plan, and she was very much on board with it. I think if you've got people who aren't so switched on, I don't mean switched on, so keen on the idea, you have to do the hearts and minds thing first. So this is why I say, start with your clients who are quite tech savvy, start with clients who want to do it, so you get the right way to do it, so that you are slick internally.
Mm.
And then when you start to get to the harder clients, some of them, it was years of drip, 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 that meant we had to plant the seed and slowly, slowly talk to them. In the meantime, there's much more about cloud around generally.
Mm.
There's no point trying to force somebody before they're ready, because it will probably fail and then they'll go, I told you so. So better that they're happy doing what they are, even though it's more work for us, and I know making text digital is coming up, but it's easier to take people when they're willing, which is a hearts and minds campaign. And as we put more clients onto Xero, our own confidence grew, and all our internal bookkeeping was on Xero, and my own practice accounts were on Xero, so we all knew it inside out and were able to help on that.
So you've mentioned, you've mentioned Xero and briefly QuickBooks. We have left technology to the end, which again, the irony is not lost on me. What do you think, if I was in your position or any accountant's position, I'd be so overwhelmed with the amount of tools and technology that is out there. When looking at the sort of the landscape, what do you sort of, can you tell us a bit sort of about your tech stack and what you think is sort of the crucial and, you start off with?
Yeah, I agree. It is quite overwhelming, and there are probably some really good apps out there that I don't know about because I haven't got time to cover everything. So there is that fear of missing out. Mm-hmm. But let's be realistic. I only have a certain number of hours for the business, and I have a life outside of that. So I can't cover everything. To shortcut it, I want something that integrates with Xero. I want something that's been around a certain amount of time. There are Xero user groups on Facebook, on LinkedIn, that you can join and talk to people. You can talk to other accountants around the country, and Receipt Bank used to arrange some practice meetups like that where people could learn from each other, and Xero as well are great at encouraging collaboration, and that's part of going to these conferences, going to XeroCon, going to the QuickBooks equivalent, and to things like Accountex, whatever. You meet people face to face, you make the connections, and when you're thinking of doing something, you can ask somebody who's already done it. You can learn from people the good and the bad things. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. So talk to other people. And then what did I actually use? Xero we opted for as the best all-round bookkeeping software, and we did have clients on other software, and that was a decision I had marked for the future as whether we would discontinue supporting other software. But at the time I sold it, we were supporting a variety of software, but Xero was our default, our go-to. And if there wasn't something that suited the client better, then we would put them onto that, because that's where all our expertise was focused. Mm-hmm. And people go, oh, you can't be just a Xero practice because it's not right for everybody. Mm-hmm. I quite agree, but there are plenty of other accountants out there who deal with the software. So had we just been Xero,
yep.
You refer the client to the best place for them,
yep,
rather than jam them onto software that's not right. So Xero was good for bookkeeping, but they also provided some excellent working papers. When I came to sell the business, part of the due diligence, I was asked to provide, all the year-end packs and the working papers for their sample of clients that they come up with, and they were particularly impressed with the Xero working papers. So I like those. On the tax side, we used Tax Calc. The simple step was so much easier, and I still use that now for my personal tax return, because the thought of having to deal with HMRC on their stuff, I'd rather pay a bit for that. So Tax Calc was very good and cost effective, and quite good support on a few occasions. We looked at Tax Calc accounts, and I quite liked that, but we actually went with VT accounts because we had some charity clients, so we needed some sophisticated templates that we could buy to add on to VT accounts. And VT accounts had just about all the templates that we needed. It was simple, it's Excel based with lots of sophisticated macros. It wasn't cloud based, so we had to stick that on a hosted desktop, and that's what would have we would have had to drop that to move to Tax Calc accounts module, because they sit together. So they were sort of the main three. To tag on to Xero, we almost always used Receipt Bank for getting the information in. For a lot of our clients, we used Spotlight for getting the information out in pretty pictures.
I think Richard Francis would love that. Yes, we make very pretty pictures.
Yeah. Well, I'm not very visual. I can look at numbers and I can spot trends, but people who aren't, they need these visual hints and indicators and clues. So let's make it easy. Let's put it into a language that fans can understand. And part of our job as accountants, we are translators, translating numbers into plain English. So we'll go with that. For debt collection, we used Chaser. It's very good. That automated that. That sent some nice chasing emails. You need your online banking to fit together with everything. So huge thing. And then for personal productivity, I use things like Trello. Oh, I've forgotten the practice management software. We used Logical Office, which again had to sit on the hosted desktop. There are things like Accountancy Manager that are out now, which are cloud-based, but also I believe that Logical Office is now cloud-based, in which case you've got two very good bits of software there. So yeah, Trello for personal productivity and just having everything available at my fingertips. I always used to say I could run my business from my phone if only my fingers were smaller and my eyesight. So it's oh, sorry, I've just seen somebody's flashed up. I'll come back to that at the end, Jason. We tried various software. One of the big things is, do you have integrated software or do you have the best of breed? And initially I went for the best of breed. It was cheaper and better. There are all these estimates of how much time and therefore how much money you save by having integrated software. But when you're a small practice, they all sound a bit over the top. So we went for that and then looked for integration later where possible, and Xero open up their APIs. I saw somebody flash up a question about Logical Office. Yes, I really liked it. I didn't find anything else to compete with it at the time, although there are now lots of alternatives. But one of the good things on Logical Office that isn't necessarily with everyone else is that they could auto-file the emails. So I didn't have to be CC'd in everything in and out of my business. I had to be CC'd on things that I needed to read, but I didn't need to be CC'd on the off chance, because it would all auto-file, and when I went to look at the client, I could see all the emails filing there. I would say, as with any software, take time to get it set up. It might even be worth paying for Logical Office to set up for you to really get the most out of it. And they've got all the workflows. The templates are brilliant to start with, and then we gradually tweaked our own on that. So templates are something that also save you a lot of time, even the smallest practices, you know, the one-man band. If you've got templates, you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Are there any more questions in terms of the tech stack that she used? And the if you could sort of, you mentioned before, so you know, the technology that enabled you to sort of build this business. Did that then reflect on how you managed your employees?
Yes. As I mentioned, I set up the business initially because I wanted part-time flexible working for myself. I also discovered this sort of untapped wealth of talent standing around the school gates. Our post office at one point had 2 graduates working there. My own cleaner had an MBA. Wow. There are lots of women taking whatever jobs are possible just to get the flexibility that they want for their families. So I was able to, with cloud-based software, I was able to offer flexibility and remote working to not just mothers, but anybody who wanted that flexibility. You know, if you have to wait in for a delivery, you can work remotely rather than have to take a half day or a full day's holiday. Now, all our contracts were for, say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 till 3. But they also specifically said that flexible working, you know, was possible. We would accommodate flexible working as far as practical, and it was pretty much always practical. I don't think I ever turned down anybody who wanted to work remotely, or to swap their hours, or to pop out for a child's assembly or a dentist visit or something. So we were able to work like that. People just had to sort of let me know when they'd be working and where. The downside of that is that at one point there was one 6-week summer holiday when 2 members of staff didn't see each other for 6 weeks because they'd both switched their hours. I'm sure it wasn't deliberate. They both switched their hours so that they could accommodate their personal requirements.
Yeah.
And so we introduced a monthly lunch and learn, for which everybody was supposed to try and get to the office for 2 hours, where our office was based above a Domino's pizza. So we'd have pizza and catch up on any CPD people had done, any changes that were happening within the business, but also just to touch base socially, because as you know, I do so much remotely. I do a lot of online network and a lot of social media, but I still think you need those personal contacts in between. So we were able to get people in one place just for 2 hours a month and just feed them. That's the thing, you know, with people working short hours, they don't want to waste too much time on lunch. So you would be feeding them at the same time and chatting and catching up. And often, if they were in the office, they'd stay and work the full day there or whatever their hours were. But the requirement was just the 2 hours each month, and we just switched the days of those meetings. So if it wasn't one of their regular days, they could do it the next month.
Great. Sounds like, I mean, we work from across the UK, and we've also got some people in Portugal, and I definitely know the difficulties, and sometimes it's great because you've got so much flexibility.
Yes.
And sometimes you're like, oh, I just really need to speak to that person, but the time zones don't work. Or I was lucky to be able to work in Australia as well for about a month. So, I mean, the flexibility that I guess the cloud grants is amazing, but I guess it then does bring up quite a few difficulties at the same time. Now, to narrow it down, I guess it's time probably to wrap up. If you had one piece of advice for those that are looking or thinking about making the leap into starting their own practice, what would that be?
You really need to know why you're doing it. And once you've worked out why you're doing it, it may well be that you can speak to your current employer and get what you want without having all the hassle of running your own business. So the first one would be, do you really want to do it? And having established why, you're able to set up your whole business to give you what you personally want. All
right, fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. If there are any more questions, just shoot me an email at adriana@capitalise.com and I can have a chat to Della. This will also be recorded and I can send this around as well. But thank you everyone. And Della, thank you so much again. And look forward to chatting to you all again soon.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks, Della. Bye.
Bye.